Have you ever had the strange feeling that someone knew something very important before anyone else? Like when someone warns of rain, no one believes them, and then a downpour falls so hard that everyone wonders, how did he know? Well, this is exactly the feeling that arises when we talk about Padre Pio and the mysterious words he left behind about the future of the Church. There's a question that for a long time, no one dared to ask. A question that seemed too weighty, too serious almost, forbidden. But now, with so many documents leaking, so many stories coming to light, and so much truth emerging after years of secrecy, that question simply can no longer be avoided. And the question is, how could Padre Pio have described decades earlier problems and corruption that would only be revealed in our day? Had he actually seen something? Had he tried to warn them, and no one listened? Or were the clues always there, but no one wanted to see them? These doubts began small, as a whisper. But today, after so many scandals that have shaken the entire world, they have turned into a cry that makes everyone pause and reflect. Did Padre Pio already know all this? And what is even more frightening is that many of his warnings, which once seemed like mere symbolic phrases, now seem like perfect descriptions of real events. Events that shocked believers, rattled authorities, and revealed that something very wrong was happening within. And this is where our story begins. Because when secret documents begin to leak, when investigations reveal what no one wanted to admit, and when the words of a saint seem to come to life, it becomes impossible to ignore what's before our eyes. Today, you'll discover why this question has been avoided for so long, and why it needs to be asked now. When we talk about Padre Pio, many imagine only a gentle man with a serene gaze and hands marked by the stigmata. But there's a side to him that almost no one knows, the side of veiled warnings, of phrases spoken with caution, as if he knew a secret too great to be revealed all at once. And that's precisely what makes it all so intriguing. Because contrary to what many think, Padre Pio didn't speak openly about the future of the Church. He spoke through metaphors, through subtle signs, as if trying to prepare someone for a difficult truth. Imagine someone saying something as simple as, "Be careful," because sometimes danger doesn't come from outside, but from within. At the time, it seems like just advice, but years later, when bad things finally happen, you realize that phrase meant much more than it seemed. That's what happened with Padre Pio's words. He didn't shout warnings, he whispered them, and many people understood the meaning of those whispers only after seeing the headlines that shocked the world. One of the most talked about quotes from Padre Pio is, "The devil will enter the Church and reach the highest positions." At the time, many thought it was an exaggeration, a metaphor, even poetry. But today, after leaks, scandals, and investigations that have revealed serious errors hidden for decades, that sentence seems almost a literal description of what really happened. How did he know? Why did he say it then? And why did so many ignore it? These warnings were recorded not only in religious books, but also in letters, conversations, and testimonies of those who lived alongside him. It is said that Padre Pio sometimes cried when he spoke of the future, as if he were seeing something he didn't want to see, something that made him profoundly sad. And this is where the great provocation of this video comes into play. If he already knew, what exactly did he see? And why do his words only make sense now? When we think of the Church, most people imagine a place of peace, security, and trust. A place where people seek help, comfort, and answers. For a long time, this was an image no one dared question. But then something began to happen. First, slowly, then like an unstoppable avalanche. Stories began to emerge in newspapers, documentaries, testimonies, and official investigations. They were stories no one wanted to believe. Stories of grave mistakes made by people who were supposed to protect, not harm. And these revelations shook the entire world. It was as if a door, always locked, had finally opened, and everything hidden behind it suddenly came to light. In the United States, for example, 2002 marked a turning point. Hundreds of cases came to light, and the entire country discovered there was much more going on than anyone had imagined. Shortly thereafter, Ireland faced its own wave of scandals, followed by Germany, France, Chile, and many others. Each new investigation seemed to reveal a piece of a much larger problem. For those on the outside, it was difficult to comprehend. How could something so serious have remained hidden for so many years? How could so many people have suffered in silence? And how could no one have noticed before? But the truth is that these revelations have not only shattered secrets, they have shattered trust, shattered certainties, and caused the world to look at the Church with a completely new perspective. And here is the most important point of this chapter. All this began to make sense of the words that Padre Pio had left decades earlier, words that seemed distant, strange, symbolic, but which now, in light of the facts, seem almost like exact anticipations of reality. These scandals were not small, nor were they limited to one place. They spread throughout the world and demonstrated that the wound was much deeper than anyone imagined. And it is precisely at this moment in history that the question resurfaces. Did Padre Pio already know that all this would happen? And if he knew, what else did he see? For many years, no one would have imagined that a collection of documents, letters, and testimonies existed that could completely change the way we understand Padre Pio's words. It was as if there were an old box hidden at the bottom of a drawer, full of important clues, but no one bothered to open it. These notes remained forgotten for decades, scattered among monasteries, short biographies, letters sent to superiors, and stories from ordinary people who lived with him daily. None of this seemed important at the time, until the truth began to emerge in the modern world. In these documents, Padre Pio spoke differently. He didn't name names, he didn't name people, he didn't provide specific dates. He spoke with powerful images, wounds that come from within, shadows among the shepherds, a time of great moral confusion. To many, it seemed like mere spiritual language, metaphors, exaggerations. But when major scandals began to erupt around the world, these phrases sounded like an echo of the past, clamoring for attention. Imagine, you find an old letter in which someone writes, "A time will come when the flock will cry for those who should protect it." At the time, it seems like a beautiful, almost poetic phrase. But years later, when real cases appear in the newspapers, you look at that letter differently. And that's exactly what happened with Padre Pio's words. What's most striking is that many of these notes weren't written by people trying to create mysteries. They were simple documents, monks recounting conversations, people sharing brief dialogues, letters of guidance sent to those seeking help, all discreetly, almost secretly, which is why no one paid much attention. But suddenly, these same documents began to make sense when compared to more recent investigations. And here's the big revelation of this chapter. Padre Pio's warnings had always been there, but they were ignored because no one believed that something so serious could happen. Now, looking at these files with the eyes of the present, it is impossible not to realize that he was trying to warn of something far bigger than anyone could have imagined. When we think of a saint, we usually imagine someone always serene, calm, almost immune to the worries of the world. But with Padre Pio, the story was very different. Those who knew him recount that, on several occasions, he would cry without being able to explain why. And the most striking thing, many of these moments occurred precisely while he was speaking about the future of the Church. It was as if he was carrying a weight that no one else could see. Imagine talking to someone who suddenly becomes sad, looking at the ground, as if seeing something others don't. This is how many describe Padre Pio in these situations. He would say things like, "Tough times are coming, much harder than you imagine." At the time, no one knew exactly what he was talking about. It seemed to be purely spiritual, But today, with all that has been revealed in the world, these phrases take on a new meaning and even send shivers down the spine. Some monks recounted that, at times, Padre Pio would fall into a profound silence after receiving news from the church. It was as if he were anticipating something that hadn't yet happened, but which was already hurting him internally. They even recounted that, on one occasion, he commented, "The suffering that will come will wound not only the faithful, but also the heart of the church." At the time, no one fully understood it. Today, that sentence seems almost a clear description of the scandals that later shocked the entire world. What's most striking is realizing that Padre Pio didn't use words of judgment or anger. He spoke with sadness, like someone who sees a storm approaching but knows he can't stop it. And this only makes everything even more touching and frightening. These signs of suffering exhibited by Padre Pio were unusual. They attracted attention, piqued curiosity, and above all, created the feeling that he knew something important, something too serious to be spoken of directly, something he tried to warn against, but which few were willing to listen to. And now, looking back, the inevitable question arises again. Did Padre Pio cry because he already knew what was going to happen? For a long time, all those mysterious phrases of Padre Pio seemed like simple spiritual warnings, almost advice to maintain the faith. But everything began to change when documents, investigations, and secret reports began to appear around the world, revealing serious errors that had remained hidden for years, sometimes decades. It was as if someone had turned on a very bright light in a room that had always been dark, and what appeared left many speechless. These leaks didn't all happen simultaneously. They emerged gradually, like pieces of a giant puzzle. First came the individual complaints, then the internal investigations, finally the official reports. In some countries, independent commissions uncovered facts so serious that even religious leaders were shocked, and each new revelation seemed to connect an important point to Padre Pio's ancient warnings. The most surprising and frightening thing is that many of his phrases spoken symbolically now seem like perfect descriptions of the situations revealed in the documents. When he spoke of open wounds in the house of God, it seemed like an exaggeration, but when the investigations revealed serious cases involving church members around the world, that phrase took on a whole new meaning. The reports revealed not only individual mistakes, but also serious flaws. Behind the scenes, hidden documents, ignored complaints, suspicious transfers, and even attempts to silence people seeking help. And all of this gave the world the sense that something enormous was happening behind closed doors. It was at this moment that scholars, journalists, and even ordinary believers began to reread Padre Pio's words. And they discovered something surprising. He seemed to have foreseen a problem that no one would ever have imagined could be so big, so deep, and so sad. The leaks were not only shocking, but also gave new meaning to words uttered many years earlier. Now, everything that had previously seemed purely spiritual was beginning to coincide with reality. And this raised a new question. Could Padre Pio's warnings have been merely metaphors? Or rather warnings about concrete events that would actually happen? When Padre Pio used the expression wounds that come from within, many thought it referred only to spiritual difficulties, common temptations, or everyday problems. But after the leaks and scandals that swept across the world, this phrase took on a new, almost frightening weight. It was as if Padre Pio were describing something that hadn't yet happened, but that would one day become visible to all. Imagine a house that looks beautiful on the outside, with sturdy walls, sparkling windows, and happy people coming in. But inside, there's a hidden flaw, a silent crack, slowly widening, unnoticed by anyone. Suddenly, when the wall collapses, everyone is shocked. But the truth is, the problem has been around for a long time. This is exactly how journalists and experts have begun to describe the scandals revealed by the Church, an internal infection which remained hidden until it could no longer be ignored. This image perfectly reflects what Padre Pio said. When he spoke of shadows among the shepherds, he wasn't referring to something simple. He was describing wrong behaviors, hidden decisions, and attitudes that hurt people precisely where they should have been protected. This seemed like an exaggeration at the time, but today, after much investigation, this metaphor has become real, painfully real. The leaked documents revealed situations that shocked the world, hidden instances of misconduct, ignored complaints, suspicious transfers, and even people silenced while seeking help. The infection was not only moral, but also structural. It was something that spanned years of bad decisions, cover-ups, and negligence that, taken together, created a deep wound within the institution. And here's where the coincidence is striking. All of this coincides exactly with what Padre Pio said, even without mentioning names or places. He wasn't referring to specific individuals. He was referring to a wounded system, a problem corroding from within, like a silent poison. Now, when we consider his words with the knowledge we have today, it is impossible not to think, did Padre Pio describe this infection long before it hit the newspapers? And if so, what else did he foresee that we don't yet fully understand? Among all the mysterious phrases left by Padre Pio, there is one that many have ignored for years. A simple, almost discreet phrase, but one that today seems charged with meaning. He said that there would be walls that hide screams. At the time, it seemed like a powerful metaphor used to express concern for people's spiritual suffering. But over time, this phrase began to trouble researchers and believers. How could something so symbolic connect so precisely to what would come to light years later? As investigations began to delve deeper, particularly by analyzing official reports emerging from countries such as Ireland, France, and Germany, it was discovered that many of the serious errors committed over the decades had been significant. They were literally hidden between the walls. Locked files, archived documents, archived complaints, stories that could never be revealed to the world. It was as if Padre Pio's metaphor had taken concrete form, as if what he had said was already happening, even if no one knew it. What makes it all the more disturbing is that this expression appears in more than one story. Those who knew Padre Pio say that, in moments of deep pain, he would mention voices no one wanted to hear and wounds hidden behind closed doors. At the time, no one understood. Today, these phrases sound frighteningly similar to what the investigations revealed. Years and years of silent, untold stories, suppressed so that no one would know what was happening. This small detail, this seemingly simple sentence, has become one of the points that most captures the attention of those who study his life. It wasn't an exaggeration. It wasn't a coincidence, and it wasn't a vague interpretation. The words fit perfectly with the facts documented decades later, and this is where the mystery deepens further. How could one use such specific images to talk about a problem that would only be revealed much later? And why did these phrases go unnoticed for so many years, until reality made them almost obvious? This detail is the key that connects the past to the present. It's as if Padre Pio had left small signs, waiting for the moment when the world was finally ready to understand them. And now that we understand this, what happens next could be even more surprising. As more documents were revealed and the investigations proceeded, it became impossible to hide a fact that many avoided admitting. The Church's greatest battle was not being fought against external enemies, but inside himself. This discovery shocked the world and, at the same time, reminded many of the words of Padre Pio, who said sadly, "The hardest fight will be internal." At the time, few understood. Now that phrase fits like a missing piece to the puzzle. Imagine a huge castle with high walls and watchful guards. Everyone thinks the danger comes from outside, from enemy armies or unexpected attacks. But then someone discovers that the threat was within the walls themselves, silent, slowly growing. This is how many experts describe what happened in the church. An invisible battle where errors, omissions and cover-ups created a conflict no one wanted to face. Even the most recent popes have recognized this. Benedict XVI, for example, spoke clearly of the need to address the filth within the church. Pope Francis, from the beginning, has called for zero tolerance and initiated profound reforms to address long-ignored cases. It's as if every leader is trying to heal a wound that hasn't yet been fully uncovered. And all of this, absolutely all of it, seems to reinforce what Padre Pio had said decades earlier, that the Church would face a period of pain and confusion caused not by external attacks, but by internal errors committed by those who were supposed to protect the people. He wasn't speaking of destruction, but of a painful process, almost like a surgical procedure necessary to cure a serious illness. Journalists began calling this process inner purification. Theologians used the term purification, and many believers began to realize that what was happening was not just an isolated scandal, but a silent battle for truth, justice, and spiritual renewal. And this is where it all comes together. Padre Pio seemed to know that this fight would be imminent and that it would be difficult, painful, and decisive. Now the whole world is watching this prediction take shape before our eyes. But the question that arises now is even more urgent. If the fight has started, what exactly happens next? For many years, Padre Pio's words were treated as metaphors, symbolic phrases, spiritual messages, advice to strengthen faith. But everything changed when reality began to resemble his words too closely. What once seemed like a simple poetic image now seemed almost an exact description of real events. And this led many to ask, is it possible that the prophecies weren't metaphors, but direct warnings about the future? As the investigation progressed, the phrases attributed to Padre Pio began to take on new meanings. When he said, "The flock will suffer at the hands of those who are supposed to protect it," it seemed like just a spiritual lesson. But after the scandals that swept the world, that phrase began to sound like a perfect summary of the facts. And this prompted scholars, priests, and the faithful to revisit every word he had left behind, independent. Reports published in countries like France, Germany, and Australia further strengthened this impact. They revealed years of hidden errors, poorly made decisions, unsolved cases, and wounds that took too long to heal. And the more these facts came to light, the more Padre Pio's old sayings seemed to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. The most surprising thing is that before, no one imagined such serious problems could exist. The image of the Church has always been associated with protection, trust, and respect. Therefore, many thought it impossible that Padre Pio was speaking of something so serious. But as time passed, it became clear that he wasn't exaggerating. He was, in a sense, foreseeing a storm that was yet to come. And it was at that moment that the prophecies ceased to be metaphors. They became chilling reminders that Padre Pio seemed to have foreseen a profound, long, and painful crisis. A crisis that would require courage, transparency, and great faith to face. Now that everything is coming to light, a new question arises, even more disturbing than the previous ones. If everything Padre Pio warned about is happening now, then what else is still to come? After so many truths came to light and so many wounds were exposed, an idea began to resonate in the hearts of many faithful. Perhaps all of this was part of something bigger, something Padre Pio had already hinted at when speaking of dark night of the Church. He said there would be a time of great pain, but that this moment would be part of a process of purification. At the time, almost no one understood what this meant. Today, that message seems clearer than ever. If we look at recent history, we see a movement that didn't exist before. The Church has begun to address long-ignored problems with greater courage. Investigations have been opened, old cases have been re-examined, documents have been re-examined, and more severe measures have been adopted. Was it a painful process? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. Benedict XVI, even during his pontificate, spoke of the need to address the filth within the institution. Pope Francis, meanwhile, called for a profound moral renewal, declaring that the Church needed to regain lost trust and place victims at the center of its decisions. It was as if every step taken was a distant echo of Padre Pio's words, a difficult but essential journey. And here's an important fact. Many think that purification means destruction, but that's not true. Purification means cleansing, healing, and rebuilding what's damaged. It means removing what's wrong so that what's right can shine again. And despite all the suffering caused by scandals, many positive changes have begun to occur precisely because of this. Padre Pio said that after the night a brighter dawn will come. This has almost become a symbol of hope for many faithful who, despite their sadness, believe that the truth is the first step toward healing. And in a certain sense, this purification is already underway. More transparency, more protection, more accountability, and less silence where once there were secrets. But that doesn't mean it's all over. In fact, it seems we're only halfway through the process, and what comes next could be even more crucial. When we look back at all that has happened, the scandals exposed, the documents leaked, the in-depth investigations, and the inaccuracies revealed, it's natural to feel a mixture of sadness, surprise, and even fear. But Padre Pio always said that after the dark night, there would come a time of light. This raises a very important question. What will happen now? Is the worst over, or are we just entering the most crucial part of this story? The truth is that the Church is changing, and these aren't small changes. They're transformations that influence how accusations are handled, how leaders are chosen, how decisions are made, and how truth is finally given more space than silence. Today, there's more. Transparency, more scrutiny, more vigilant eyes, and less tolerance for errors that were previously hidden. This shows that something new is emerging, something that perhaps Padre Pio had already sensed. Many dioceses around the world have established independent commissions to investigate unsolved cases. In several countries, laws have become stricter, forcing religious institutions to cooperate with civil authorities. The Church itself has adopted previously unheard of rules and policies, demonstrating that the purification he mentioned is becoming a reality. But there's an even more important detail. Padre Pio didn't just talk about correction, he talked about renewal. It's as if the Church is undergoing a period of spiritual, moral, and human reconstruction. And when we see groups of young people reclaiming their faith, new leaders emerging with firmer positions, and entire communities seeking greater clarity and justice, it seems that this renewal is only just beginning. Nonetheless, an air of uncertainty persists. What will the future hold? How significant will these changes be? What problems do we still face? And is there anything we still don't know? These questions don't have easy answers, but they make it clear that we are living in a profound and historic moment. What lies ahead can be challenging, but it can also be a time of healing, strength, and rebuilding. A time to learn from mistakes, protect the innocent, and regain lost trust. And perhaps this is what Padre Pio was trying to convey when he spoke of a brighter dawn. After all we've seen, the warnings of Padre Pio, the leaked documents, the scandals revealed, the reforms initiated, and the purification underway, it's impossible not to feel we're witnessing something far greater than we imagined. And it's precisely here, in this moment in history, that the most important question of all arises. A simple question, yet so profound that it seems to resonate within us. If everything Padre Pio predicted has begun to happen, then What remains to be accomplished? This question doesn't arise from fear, but from awareness, from the knowledge that perhaps there are parts of this story we still don't fully understand. Padre Pio spoke of the future with sadness, but also with hope. He said that the pain would be great, but that the healing would be even greater. For him, the darkness wasn't the end, but rather the necessary path for the light to be reborn stronger. When we look at the world today, we notice something interesting. As difficult stories come to light, advocacy movements, truth-focused groups, more knowledgeable leaders, and a much deeper quest for transparency and justice have emerged. It's as if the Church, for the first time in a long time, is facing its own reflection and deciding to truly change. And this brings us to another reflection. Padre Pio's true prophecy could have concerned corruption itself, but it concerned the need to address it so that something new might emerge. Perhaps his message wasn't just a warning against tragedy, but a call to renewal, courage, and responsibility. The truth is, no one knows exactly what will happen next. But one thing is certain, we are living in a moment he seemed to foresee, a time when the truth finally emerges and healing begins to take shape, albeit slowly, even through tears, even with difficulty. And that's what makes this question so powerful, because it concerns not only the future of the Church, but the future of all those who believe in truth, justice, and faith. What remains to be accomplished? What will we still discover? What will be the next step on this journey? Now I want to hear, what part of this revelation surprised you the most? Do you think there is something even bigger yet to come? And of course, before moving on to the next video or content, subscribe to the channel to follow the next revelations. Leave a comment below. Your opinion is very important to this community. See you in the next video. See you soon.
Hear the true prophetic message.